No. Okay, now it looks good. So it's a day about words, and I've been working with words quite a lot, and I would like to show you a certain perspective on how one might think about words. So let's ask the first question. So what if words were alive? So how do we think of them now? And I think there is an interesting story of how words escaped language and they had a great time. I don't know if you know this story, but it's a kind of a quite relevant story, and I would like to portray it with Chomsky. You know Chomsky, it's a kind of famous philosopher and an activist, a linguist. And there is this other guy whose name is Peter Norvig. He was the main guy who was doing research in Google on Google search and these kind of things. And then what Chomsky represents is really language. So he wants to think of words, and these words have to follow rules, and they have to be part of specific grammar, and then in these grammars you have those rules, and then these words have a meaning, and these meanings are very important, and all of this together kind of will help us to deal with words. And then, by being friends with Norvig, those words kind of escaped those games. They said, we don't care about meaning, we don't care about grammar, we don't care about the structure of things, and they're going to outperform everything that Chomsky did. And somehow, with what's going on now, I think they made it. Today, nobody talks anymore about structuralist approach towards words. So if you look, for instance, ChatGPT, or if you look Xenotheka and what we did with Alice, there is no grammar, there are no rules. And for instance, even with Google Translate could outperform any structuralist way of translating without knowing any grammar, without knowing any structure, and without caring about the meaning of words. So in a sense, these words had a lot of fun when they escaped language. There is a difference between talking and language. Language formalizes talking towards working with words. And what's funny today, I think, is that we, in a way, write images and we write texts. That's kind of funny. Today, somehow it feels that it's all about writing. So what happens if we write images, if we write text? What about architecture? Can we write architecture? What I think is funny here, and there is a certain wisdom of words, or there is a certain wisdom of language, or there is a certain wisdom of tongues, which connects architecture, text, and textile. These are, for instance, things that I like a lot. And what connects architecture, text, and textile is this text part. So architect is, etymologically, if you look at it, it's a kind of a great builder who weaves things together. Text is also about weaving things together. And if we think about the relationship between text and textile, it's very direct. Textile is also about weaving things together. And I think this is what's happening today with, for instance, with ChatGPT. What ChatGPT brings to the table is a kind of a notion of a super glue. It can weave anything with anything without any kind of a problem. But what is the problem? The problem with ChatGPT is always that it gives you a kind of, just a kind of a common sense. So it's not really a common sense, it's a common understanding of the world seen from the Western perspective. This can be a little bit tricky, and it can be a little bit boring, it can be a little bit too polite, and so on. So it can be also a little bit imperialistic in a sense. So how to balance these things? So for me and for us in the research team with Digital Architectonics, what we think is that we can counterbalance this with a certain understanding of what would be the other thing to a kind of artificial general intelligence. So this would be kind of an artificial personal intelligence, or a kind of a personalized AI. So then we put in relation to ChatGPT something that we call Ask.Alice. And what is the difference between Ask.Alice or Xenotheka and ChatGPT is that ChatGPT, or at least the humanists, always like to claim that this kind of databases are neutral. Yeah? But what's interesting is that all the databases are always biased. So for instance, our database of Xenotheka is biased towards architecture, it's biased towards philosophy, it's biased towards mathematics, it's biased towards physics, it's blind to chemistry, it's blind to biology, and these kind of things. But we are very proud that it's biased. And I think we should always be proud of our biases. And whoever says that things are neutral, I think there is a problem. For me, it's always a kind of a red flag. So words, I think, if we look at them now from the perspective of computation, from the perspective of what's going on now on the internet, with ChatGPT, with Mitchell, and with all of these things, I think words love 21st century. They really enjoy how we are playing with them. What's happening and why I think the context of 21st century is so nice for words is because words are never alone. So words are always in context, in a certain historical context, in a certain social context, in whichever context you like them to be. And what's happening today, I think it's interesting that when we write with all the words, we write with all the books, we write with all the libraries. So how do we write if we have all the books, all the libraries, all the images, all the movies, all of these things at our fingertips? The assumption is that it should be a little bit different than when we don't have it. So therefore, kind of an interesting idea is to think of computation as a kind of literacy. So what does that mean? That means that if you are literate, you can write a text, you can write an email, you can write a poem, you can write a book. So if you are literate in computation, I think there is a whole range of things how to think about it. What is important is not only to think of computation as a kind of a way of solving problems. Let's rather think of computation as a way of making problems. And now let's get back to the idea of how books and concepts are alive. So what does that mean? If a concept or a word or a book is alive, this would, in my understanding, mean that it doesn't have a fixed meaning. So if you think about certain things when you are 20, and when you think about them when you are 40, when you are 60, and when you are 200, or 2,000 years old, it's different. So you change, and the way how you think changes. So if the words are alive, this means that they don't like to be put against the wall, so to get definitions, to take them to definito. They like to be in principle free. And I think what information technologies allow us is exactly to play these kind of games with words. So let's take it further. So how concepts travel, for instance. I would say that concepts travel through time. How do they travel through time? This is the kind of the easiest way. So etymology. This is a beautiful website for looking at etymology. For instance, here, if you check the architect, you get all this weaving of things together. So this is how a certain word morphs through time and is acquiring different kind of meanings. This comes from a kind of a historical context. The same game is, for instance, with the Google Ngrams. So with the Ngram viewer, you can check how popular were words at certain times. For instance, how popular was Albert Einstein, or how Sherlock Holmes at a certain point more popular than Einstein. So this would be a way how they travel through time. Through space, they travel through different translation, from one geography to another geography to another geography, by translating them through different languages. They also travel through space by the way how they are interrelated, so through their synonyms and antonyms, through the way how they change their meaning and link to each other. But this is a kind of part of a common sense. This is a kind of a part of a historical setup where words live. What is incredibly interesting is that today we can synthesize this kind of environment. So we can make synthetic histories and synthetic contexts for words, and then we can check how they behave. What are they doing? So for instance, let's check how would words, so the topic of our conversation is words, and we will ask, what are words? And we will ask it through a context, which I call a library of Serre's friends. These are all these kind of French post-structuralist guys, like for instance Deleuze, Foucault, Michel Serre, and these kind of guys. Huh? And then let's check what are words. So in this kind of probabilistic setup, we get many different ways of what words are. Huh? We have 673 ways of looking what are the words. Let's just extend this a little bit. So instead of having a one definition of what words are, we will have a lot of them. And then start looking what they want to be. Huh? Words are actions. Words are born when you don't expect them. Words are produced. Words are passed about. Words are spoken, passed about again. Words are sense organs. How you get they get an interesting lively profile. Words are the symbols of mental experience. Words are distinguished from sounds. Words are quite useless. So you get a kind of a spectrum of what words might be, and if you like a certain one, for instance, we like this one, we can get a context, we can copy this quote, always, have it in your library, or you can go to the, check which book is this, but you have to put here an X if you want to join the Xenotheka setup. Then if you click on Xenotheka, you get the book directly, of what these words are. Now let's take a look. Who are the friends of words word? What are the concepts and indexes around words? So let's look at, for instance, a certain galaxy of concepts. So this is a galaxy of concepts of a specific library. So this is a synthetic environment in which one word lives. So let's try to find here the word word. It's here. So it's in a specific part of a galaxy. So what does it mean? We don't want to define it. But then to get what this word might be about, we look a little bit around the neighborhood of this specific thing. So it's about abundance, it's about holy, it's about loudly, it's about names, it's about tenses, it's about a certain logic, it's about speaking, but it's about stupidity as well. It's about happiness, it's about the moment, it's about death, it's a little bit about the beginning and so on. So it's a kind of an open spectrum. Because of course these are the French post-structuralists and they love words and they love that words are not confined, but they can play around and go to different places. Which would be very different, for instance, if the word travels from a library of post-structuralists to, for instance, a library of Homer's friends. So now we are going with the word towards ancient Greece. Yeah? If we look at here, for instance, to another, so this is funny, words travel to different contexts, they travel to different galaxies of concepts. So here we have another galaxy of concepts. This is, for instance, how Seneca looks at a specific constellation. So let's check where is the word. It's not this one, it's this one here. So now let's look at the context. The context is radically different. Here it's about making, it's about being just, it's about the truth, it's about the answer, it's about purity, it's about pursuit, it's about teaching, it's about the teacher, it's about being constant, and these kind of things. Huh? So the feeling, this openness of French post-structuralism gets very strict in meaning when it goes to Greece, because these guys believed in the meaning of words much more, or at least one could argue like this from this perspective. But let's remember, this is not the truth. This is a specific context in which we look at a specific word. So, and now let's push this forward. Huh? It's not only that words or concepts travel through different kinds of galaxies, the same happens with books. So what happens, for instance, if a book travels to another galaxy? So here I have an example, for instance, of a famous book, which is called Le Corbusier Towards a New Architecture. So what happens when these books goes to different environments and to different libraries? How does it behave differently? Yeah? So first, Le Corbusier goes to a library where there are only 34 books, and these books are of this kind. Yeah? So it's, for instance, James Joyce, Ulysses, there is Borges, Dickens, so it's literature. So how does Le Corbusier Towards a New Architecture behave when it comes to a setup where are all these literary guys around? So what's he going to talk about? I think you know what he's going to talk about. He's going to talk about architecture. Yeah? So this is a galaxy of concepts of a specific library in which mostly they are literary actors, except Le Corbusier. So he comes there and he says, these are my favorite concepts. Huh? So this is all done by AI machine learning in the background. What is he talking about? He's talking about the house, plan, period, tower, space, square, wall, spirit, culture, these kind of things. Huh? So these are town and so on. This is a classical architectural vocabulary. Of course, if you are around with guys who are writing books, you start to talk about the things that you are the best in. But what happens when this guy goes to another library? Here is 49 books, and they are all about architecture. Huh? So we have Benham, we have Jenks, and so on. It's all architecture. Huh? Now Le Corbusier says, okay, I'm going to talk in different terms. So it's another party, it's another galaxy of concepts, and I'm going to have a different way of talking. Huh? So now it's interesting how Le Corbusier Towards a New Architecture, of course, these are all invented stories, yeah? So it's a kind of playing with words. I just want to show how books and concepts are alive and they travel through times and histories. So whoever says that they know what Aristotle meant when he wrote the book, I'm not sure what they are saying. It's another red flag. Yeah? So Le Corbusier says axis and a cylinder, a cupola and a turbine, cupola and a boudoir, an epoch and a chassis, liner and a hangar, dealer and mosque. So this is, if you want to, how I interpret this is exactly how the book goes. He talks about Greek temples by comparing them to sea liners and industrial stuff. Yeah? So it's very funny how this guy changed the way how he wants to talk when he went from one library to another library. If you like this kind of things and this kind of games, I would invite you. I'm not sure if you know this library, but you all have access to this. So it's a public. Now it's a kind of public-private library that came from our research on text. We collected a lot of books and data which we needed for research, and we opened it for all the students. You have your username and password. Will help you to get into those books. What's beautiful here is that you have directly a PDF. If you like computing, and I'm sure you are very good in computing, you have text files, which are plain text, so you can do computation, you can do different kind of analysis, word counting, and so on, and you can start reading directly. The way to think about Xenotheka, so Xenotheka is like biblioteca, yeah? So it's a teke, which is a kind of a chest, it's a kind of a box, but it's a strange box, like you have xenophobia, xenophilia, you have xenofeminism, and you have Xenotheka. So it's a strange library which invites books But those books have to say what they are thinking about, things that they like. Yeah? So we have around 2,000 books there, and this is in a way one part of a gift for you, so please use this, and to navigate this, so not to read a library, not to read a book, but to read a library, you have this tiny character here. This is Ask.Alice, and through Ask.Alice you can look and search through all those books. So for instance now, let's go back towards architecture. We choose a different brain or a different context or a different milieu for Alice. So we take this brain of Xenotheka. Here we have the body shows all the books which are here. Yeah? And then we can ask it what is architecture. So the topic of conversation is architecture, and they say architecture is, and let's look what's there. So I would invite you, for instance, to go through this, for instance, check. Again, I like this kind of searching. Architecture is, yeah? Architecture is a result. Architecture is a key to everything. Architecture is asserting itself. Architecture is only elusive. Architecture is top grade. Architecture is fourth grade. Architecture is fresh like empty. Architecture is no longer architecture. Architecture is movement. Architecture is matter. Architecture is a phenomenon of creation. Architecture is the art of building. Yeah? Take 20 that you like, copy them, like articulations, so let's not call them definitions, but articulations of what the copy should kind of copy. Yeah? Collect 20 of them, and then in 2 years check if you like them or not. Yeah? And then collect another 20. I think that's a kind of an interesting game that in principle you can play. If you are more interested in these things, here you have tutorials about Ask.Alice. There is a whole book which is written about this. You have tutorials how to play with these things. And if you want to get more in depth with these kind of things, there is a whole YouTube channel, and here you have a way of learning how to work with Alice. And here in the talks we have different articulation of similar kinds of implementation of this kind of thinking towards architecture, towards fashion, and towards this kind of thing. Yeah? So I hope I gave you a little bit of kind of thinking around what words might be, and words are in principle cool. We just have to let them be free. Thank you very much.
Indeed, it's quite a lot. Does anyone have a question or remarks? Yeah, you were very excited.